Well, Opposition Leader Peter Dutton has given coalition frontbenchers an ultimatum: oppose the Prime Minister's Voice referendum or resign from the party. He joins us now from Sydney. Peter, good morning to you.
Morning, Carl.
So it's a no to the Voice. Is that because the Liberal Party has none at the moment?
Carl, I think Australians are starting to realise that this is a very significant change to our constitution. It's probably the biggest change proposed since the Federation, and I think we're talking about a system of changing our whole way of government. And as a lot of Australians are realising, it may just be another bureaucracy that's not going to help Indigenous Australians. So we've said yes to constitutional recognition. We believe that's important. We do believe very strongly in a local and regional advisory body so that we can get the practical support to people on the ground. But what the PM's doing at the moment is dividing our country, and what we proposed yesterday, I think, is an opportunity to unite our country, and that's exactly the decision we've taken.
So no referendum has ever got up without bipartisan support. Are you worried at all that you might be effectively burying it?
Well, Carl, 2 points. I mean, firstly, my job is to do what's in our country's best interests, and the Prime Minister won't answer questions, and this is a significant disruption to government. As the Voice itself has pointed out, the referendum working group, they can have an influence into the Reserve Bank, into every aspect of government decision making. This is not just about Indigenous communities. The second point is that there are plenty of referendums that have gone down, been voted down, even where both parties have supported it, and I believe very strongly we want to stand up for Australians. I'm advocating a no vote because I don't believe it's in our country's best interests, and I don't believe that it's going to deliver the practical outcomes for people in regional and rural areas.
Now, the messaging is a little confusing. So you're rejecting a Canberra voice but not a regional voice, like a lot of other people, including John Farnham. I'm just trying to understand it.
Did you say that? I can't see you, but did you say that with a straight face or not?
What do you think?
I can't hear you, Carl.
No, it's fine. Are you willing to negotiate, or is it all
Carl,
done?
are you okay? We haven't got onto the 2 foot Dagwood dog yet. We're here at the Royal Easter Show.
We'll get there.
Anyway, it's a different story. Look, I mean, on a serious note, everyone wants a better outcome for Indigenous Australians. I mean, you look at what the kids and women, the rates of domestic violence that we're seeing in Alice Springs at the moment, it's appalling. And you'd sign up tomorrow to anything to resolve that situation. But what the PM's saying at the moment is, just vote for it on a vibe.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you the detail afterwards. I just don't think Australians will support that. So it's our constitution, and you can't pass a law that that changes the constitution. The constitution overrides the parliament, and that's why it's important to know what it is we're being asked to vote for. And at the moment, the PM refuses to provide any of that detail.
Okay.
And it's just a Canberra-based voice that's bureaucratic.
Are you willing to negotiate, or is it all done?
Well, we've said yesterday we want to sit down with the government, and the constitutional recognition of Indigenous Australians is very important, but the Voice goes a step beyond what I think is realistic and what's in our country's best interest. So happy to sit down. The Carmel Langton report that the Prime Minister refers to actually recommended a local and regional advisory body before a national body. And as people in Indigenous communities have said to us, they just don't want city-based academics who are pretending to represent their views. They want practical outcomes on the ground, and we want money being spent in a wise way to help people with housing and maternal services and birthing units and rehabilitation centres, etc., jobs. All of that's important, but I just don't think the Prime Minister's Canberra-based voice is going to deliver that.
Can you really afford resignations? I mean, there's no one left.
Well, Carl, there's always a spot for you. But look, if there are a couple of... In our party, 99% of people support the position we've got. I know you spray off the top there about frontbenchers having to resign, but that's the case in relation to every bill.
Yeah.
If the shadow cabinet makes a decision, people have to abide by it, and that's just business as usual.
Ahead of Easter, what are you up to?
But we're here at Royal Easter Show this morning, back home to Brisbane, and hopefully I'm having a steak with a couple of mates of mine, so maybe a longish lunch, not by your standards. Won't be reported in the paper tomorrow, I hope. And and I will
Wow.
then have hopefully just a couple of days at home, with Kirrily and the kids.
All right.
Well, actually, no, we're empty nesters. The kids have abandoned us.
stand
They're
by.
out with friends.
You might be in the papers.
Just Kirrily and I and Ralph, the spoodle for. So it could be.
Good on you,
so
mate.
A few days off.
Thanks,
All good.
Pete. Enjoy. Happy Easter, Sarah.
Thanks,
Just
mate.
avoid
Cheers.
the steak on Good Friday. Hey, Pete. All right, well, tens of thousands of tradies have put down their tools to rally on the streets demanding wage rises. Tensions were high. A glass door in Brisbane reportedly smashed during one of the protests. For more, we're joined by National Secretary of the CFMEU, Zach Smith. Zach, thanks so much for your time. What was the intention of yesterday's protests?
Yeah, look, tens of thousands of construction workers, as you said, all around the country, in each major city, down tools and took to the streets. I saw some reports that said the figure nationally was as high as 250,000. So it was a significant day of action from our union. And the sentiment, I'll describe it as frustration, if not anger. They are frustrated. We know that working people are under siege when it comes to cost of living, a crisis that's been caused by corporate greed, not by workers, by profit-taking by the big end of town. Construction workers are in particularly frustrated because we have issues such as wage theft, sham contracting and corporate insolvencies that are running rife in our sector. And we have bodies like the Fair Work Ombudsman, which is the regulator designed to stand up for workers, which seems either unable or unwilling to stand up for workers when they need them more than ever.
Why resort to violence, though? I mean, these workers are clearly struggling, but is this kind of damage that we saw in Brisbane the way to get the message across? You're not going to win much sympathy there.
Look, that incident in Brisbane was unfortunate. I wouldn't go so far as to describe it as violence. I've seen the footage, as has many others.
Well, you don't smash glass doors. How do you describe that action then?
It was an accident, and I think clearly the footage show it was an accident. But notwithstanding that, the union has reached out to the building owner, and we are making good and fixing that window. And I don't want one piece of broken glass to really distract from what are critical issues for working people in this country and what are issues for construction workers.
I guess the concern is you see that smashed glass, whether it's an accident, as you say, or not, and then you see those protests in Melbourne off the back of those COVID vaccines mandates a year ago. I mean, it doesn't paint a good picture when you take to the streets and this kind of stuff eventuates.
Well, let's just be really clear here. What happened in Melbourne, those COVID protests were far-right activists agitating people to go and attack the union's offices. So we need to be really clear there that that wasn't in any way a CFMEU rally. That was far-right extremist elements that had agitated members of the community and some construction workers to attack our union's offices. So it's not fair to draw a parallel between the two events. And as for what happened in Brisbane, there were rallies all across this country which were speaking to very important issues around cost of living, around the continuation of unfair laws, around the role of the Ombudsman, the regulator. And this is what we need to be talking about as a country, because these are the issues that are front and centre in our members' and workers' minds at the moment.
Do you think your voice was heard following those protests yesterday? Do you reckon you might be able to achieve those objectives you're after?
Look, I think our voice was heard. Like I said, some reports said that 250,000 workers down tools and joined rallies all around this country. Now, that is significant by anyone's measure. That's a significant show of support, but it's also a significant sign of the frustration that working people are facing. And we do need a hard reset in the way we talk about some of these issues that affect working people. For too long, we have said there's a cost of living crisis and that working people need to bear the brunt through interest rate increases, through wage restraint. But what the economic research shows us, it's corporate profit taking and price gouging that's driving up the cost of living in this country. And we need to be more mature and brave enough to have the conversation in this country about how we tackle these issues without belting working people over the head continuously.
Yeah, it is devastating when you see people losing their jobs, especially when large building companies collapse, as we've seen again in Melbourne. Thanks so much for your time, Zach.
Thank you.
Well, millions of Aussies are expected to travel for the Easter holidays, and airports across the country are gearing up for a very busy weekend. Let's bring in Margy Osmond, the CEO of the Tourism Transport Forum, along with Melbourne Airport's Andrew Lund. Good morning, guys. Nice to see you this morning. Margy, to you first of all. A bit of financial pressure biting out there this Easter, so what are people doing?
Well, absolutely. And we saw this before Christmas. People were starting to talk about cost of living impacts. And what we're seeing for Easter is something like 57% of people have said, yes, it's making a difference. It'll mean shorter stays, probably more likely to be staying with mum and dad. Those sorts of things will be nipped and tucked, and the holidays will definitely be shorter.
I'll swing back to you in a sec. Andrew, despite our cost of living concerns, airports are gearing up for a massive weekend. And despite those prices going through the roof, how many travellers do you expect to pass through Melbourne?
Well, Carl, we're expecting about 490,000 passengers through the terminals over the next 5 days, and about 2 million between now and Anzac Day. So that's about 95% of the numbers we'd have expected pre-COVID. So we're pretty close to getting back to normal, and fair to say we'll be busy, but we're as ready for it as we can be.
It's a pretty busy airport any time of day, any time of year. What can travellers do to avoid those big crowds, those big queues?
Look, if you're travelling on some of the busier days, particularly Thursdays and Fridays, then there's a good chance that you will experience some queuing, but we're aiming to keep those queues moving as quickly as we can. The best thing you can do is really give yourself time. We're recommending arriving between 90 minutes and 2 hours ahead of domestic flights, 2 to 3 hours ahead of international flights. If you're driving to the airport, allow yourself plenty of time to find a car park, because the car parks will be particularly busy.
Yeah.
But if you can take a bit of pressure off yourself, that helps take pressure off the system.
Sydney Airport, meantime, is an absolute basket case for a park. Margy, to you, where are people going to go, and what are the sort of things they can be doing this Easter?
Well, look, lots of people are telling us they're staying at home, and they're staying at home in their own state. And it's not surprising, because there are some really terrific things to do. You know, in places like New South Wales, it's everything from Blues Fest to the Dungog Rodeo to the Blessing of the Fleet at Ulladulla. There's tons to do, and that'll be replicated in every state. But if you're going interstate, people are going to Melbourne, they're going to regional Victoria, they're of course going to Queensland, and they're going to places like the Sunshine Coast, the Gold Coast, those sorts of things.
Great to help out local tourism operators too, I reckon, too. A lot of family-run businesses.
Absolutely, and I think this is the critical thing. If you've decided that, you're going to save those pennies over the Easter long weekend or the school holidays, there's an awful lot to do in your own backyard.
Yeah.
So don't feel like you've got to stay at home in front of the TV
When
set.
will prices come down on airfares?
Once we've got greater capacity. So long as we don't have a lot of flights coming in internationally, that's going to add to the issues around cost.
All right, good to talk to you. What are you doing for Easter?
Well, what are you doing for Easter?
Noose everything, you know.
What could go wrong? I'm staying
Fair
home.
point, Sarah.
Ooh. Yes, what could go wrong, Carl? Good to see Lundy on the screen again anyway as well. All right, well, let's go now to a rather bizarre story in Queensland. No, it's not about Carl, where police are appealing for the return of a platypus after it was taken from its natural habitat. It was last seen stuffed in a shopping bag. The suspected thieves then boarding a train heading towards Caboolture. Joining us now is on the Gold Coast is Superintendent Scott Knowles from Queensland Police. Thank you, and Wildlife Ranger David Feeney. Thank you so much for your time, Superintendent. I want to come to you first. What are police doing to track down this thief?
Yes, good morning. Look, we were contacted by our partners at the Department of Environment and Science after they received a telephone call advising of this couple boarding a train carrying a live platypus. As a result, we've started an appeal to the community around trying to identify these people and assist us in terms of recovering the platypus and getting it back into its natural environment. I'd like to express our appreciation to the community of Queensland. In that first hour of that appeal, we received well over 1,000 contacts through our police link, our Crime Stoppers and our social media platforms. And as a result, we've managed to identify that person, but we haven't yet located them. So we're still actually looking for those people. What we'd like to do is actually give a warning to the community that there is some dangers around for both the platypus and the community if they do see this platypus or interact with it.
Claudette, I want to come to you now. What do you think? I mean, obviously everyone loves platypuses, but what could motivate a crime like this? Look,
part of the information that we have received was actually from a member of the community that interacted with them at one of the local shopping centres. They've expressed to that member of the community that they actually found the platypus on a roadway, had picked it up with the intention of returning it into a waterway. But we obviously need to follow that up now just to determine whether that has happened, to make sure that the members of the community are safe and that the platypus has been looked after and is well enough to return to the environment.
Claudette, you and your team do such an incredible job at the David Fleet Wildlife Park. You must have been concerned, I suppose, about the platypus's welfare, its well-being.
Yeah, we do have high concerns of its welfare. They're such a unique animal that do need specialised care. Many institutions or wildlife institutions across Australia, find it very hard to maintain because you've got to mimic their natural habitat in a captive environment. So these platypus, they do need to forage for their food, so they need to be underwater for about 12 to 13 hours to forage for their food, and they do feed on live prey, which is quite unique. And also they need their body temperature to be at a certain degrees, and if they get higher than 30 degrees, that can be quite critical, and the platypus could potentially faint and could potentially die. So there is lots of great concerns on the welfare of the platypus at this stage.
All right, Claudette and Scott, thank you both so much for your time.
Welcome back to the show. A day after pleading not guilty to 34 felony charges, and Donald Trump is not holding back, egging on Republicans in Congress to defund federal law enforcement.
Let's go live to US correspondent Jonathan Kersley, who's outside Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence. Jono, good morning. Another attack from the former president. Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise, Donald Trump has woken up an unhappy and angry man this morning, a day after facing a New York court on 34 felony charges relating to hush money payments. Last night he was here inside his Mar-a-Lago home in his ballroom, a rather sombre attitude from the former president as he addressed really a handpick of loyal supporters. This was home turf, it was comfortable territory for him as he lashed out at everybody from the district attorney to the judge to the special counsel. Had some remarks for the family who were in the room, noticeably Eric and Donald Trump Jr. Wife Melania was absent. Then he went to bed. This morning he has woken up and gone straight to Truth Social, firing off a number of attacks on the Democrats, accusing them of weaponising the justice system. And then he issued this remark, again all in caps, typical Donald Trump fashion, in which he said that the Republicans in Congress should defund the FBI and the DOJ. Now, what is interesting with this is that neither the FBI or the Department of Justice have anything to do with the New York State case that he is currently facing 34 felony charges for, but it is a sign of just perhaps how much the weight of yesterday and the weight of the 3 other criminal investigations he is facing is currently sitting on his shoulders.
John, the former president has also copped a bit of trolling. No surprise there.
Surprise, surprise again, Cole. Yeah, this time from Russian state television. This was actually prior to the arrest hearing in New York yesterday. But they used this image during a broadcast, which was an artificial intelligence image. Donald Trump sitting in a courtroom in orange prison overalls. Now, given all of the issues around the first impeachment and allegations of Russian interference in the election, it is interesting to note Russian state television now poking fun at the former president, who this morning... No, he's not coming out. No, he's not. I thought he might come out wandering
flying
out.
back to New York?
See for a chat, but no. Donald, do you want to? No. He's probably firing off another Truth Social post.
Long day for you all yesterday,
there,
mate. It continues today and will continue for the next year. So good luck in Florida.
It's gone already.
Donald's.
Hey there, Today fans. Sarah and...
What's my name again?
Oh my God. Carl.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel, though. Subscribe now for more news, special reports, and amazing Aussie stories.
And Carl misbehaving,
Whoa,
of course.
That never happens.
Always happens.
What's she talking about?
Always happens.